Hello and welcome to the Book Club Review, the podcast about book clubs and the books that get you talking. To start a new book club, you have to have a certain amount of faith, as you don't know whether it's going to succeed or fail. But when French expat Eléonore Pratoussy had the idea to start the Lesbian book club in East London, she hadn't imagined that she would almost immediately have a long waiting list of people wanting to join. I met up with her and fellow book clubbers Caroline and Carina to find out more. Eléonore began by telling me what motivated her to start the group.
Being a lesbian myself, I wanted to meet like-minded women, expand my horizons, expand my circle of friends. There was queer and gay book clubs, but there was nothing so niche as a lesbian book club. I knew what I wanted to read, and I didn't want to meet into people's mold, and I just wanted to create my own. So I thought, if I make a list of the books I want, I could it a very obvious name to the kind of people I want to meet, then that should do the trick.
Is it books by lesbian authors, or is it any kind of books that you're then discussing with a certain point of view?
We didn't really have a fixed idea of what kind of books we wanted to read. At first, we explored Gender Trouble by Judith Butler. There was Orlando by Virginia Woolf. A mix of books written by lesbians or queer women, or just books written by women in general. And a clear interest rose with queer and lesbian narrative and race and ethnicity as well. That's what we've seen over the past year.
So has it almost kind of evolved as you've been going on?
Yeah, exactly. We choose on a monthly basis what we're going to read next, and making sure that the whole community can choose which book they are interested in.
Caroline and Carina, what was your experience when you came along for the first time? Caroline?
I was also on the lookout for a bit of a niche book club, and this was very close, and it was exactly what I was looking for. So I came to the first session where we read Rubyfruit Jungle.
Rita Mae Brown. We've actually had that recommended on our show before.
It's very good.
Yeah,
it is very good.
You recommend it?
Yeah, definitely.
You'd endorse the recommendation?
Yes.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah. My first experience was a good one. I was a bit apprehensive that lots of us would have very similar viewpoints and then there wouldn't be that much discussion, but that's not really been the case at all. And I think it just goes to show the diversity of people, even if they do have that shared characteristic and shared preferred narratives, the way that they see them and interpret them is always so different. And I think literature is really wonderful in being able to bring that out in people.
Carina, how about you? What was your first one like?
I can't remember. I'm sure I had a good time. Yeah, I think I joined for similar reasons. Maybe our stars aligned. I had this kind of feeling to write more, or I wanted to write more. And it occurred to me that I wanted to read more. And I wanted to take some time to expand the books that I was reading. And then I was thinking about what I've read. And I realized it was by, I don't know, old people, by dead people. I was like, I need to mix up what I'm reading. So I knew that I was looking for something that was, as Caroline said, more diverse. And I was looking for something social as well. I was hoping it would be queer-friendly, gay-friendly. And in my mind, in terms of what I was hoping to read about, it's exactly what has kind of come up, like a focus on female authors, lesbian authors, feminist topics, queer topics. We've also touched on things like race and identity. And as we were kind of discussing before, it's kind of slowly evolving, I guess, as people join and bring their ideas and different desires for what they want to read. That's kind of slowly affecting what we choose to read.
I'm curious to know, in your discussion, whether your discussion of something like, say, Orlando, which I think would be familiar to a lot of readers, would be in any way different than a general book club. And is that important if there is a difference to those discussions?
One of the motivations for wanting to join the book club is that I wanted to have the space to be able to read literature through a queer woman's lens and get that perspective and focus on that perspective and see what diversity there was within that perspective. And I think you do end up having a different set of takeaways from when you look up and see what other people have said about the book. You realise that your focus areas were very different, and the way that we understand relationships, particularly ones that are a bit more complicated, perhaps didn't have the freedom that heterosexual partnerships have. You see them and you understand them and you empathise with them in a very different way. So I think for me that's exactly why, because I believe that we do go in reading with that perspective, but it's diverse in itself.
And it's been a success, hasn't it, Eléonore? I think you were saying you have quite a large number of people now on your list.
Yeah, so that's the next challenge for 2019. I set up the book club, and within the first week we had 70 members. The meetups were packed month after month with as many people coming as people on the waiting list, literally until the last minute. Is there any space? Can I come? Etc. And so now we are nearly 300 members, not all active, of course. Currently we have only one meetup in Haggerston at the De Beauvoir Arms on Southgate Road. And this is limited to 10 to 12 people maximum, because we really want to ensure that there is this safe, intimate place where we all get to know each other, and we always have new members coming every month. And so the next challenge is how are we going to make sure that we engage with that audience, because 300 members, there is clearly a need for this kind of book club to really help the community come together. I think that in my personal experience, the lesbian community can be quite cliquey. It's quite difficult to get to meet new people. My personal experience, again, is very much meeting people through work or through my exes, which is not necessarily what you want when you're looking for something fresh and a new perspective and all. I don't play team sports, so there was no chance for me to meet any football players or hockey players. And so I'm actually launching an appeal, using this podcast interview to launch an appeal. One of our ambitions for next year is to create new chapters, excuse the pun, but new chapters of Lesbian Book Club across London. So we currently have one in Haggerston. I'm going to be creating a second one in Myland. We're looking for Camden, for South London, for Central London, even West London if anyone is interested as well. Really having these people who would have the time and the energy to help us engage further, these 300 members.
And tell me about those meetings. How do they work? What are the sort of basic mechanics of it?
Usually prior to the meeting, obviously we've decided what book we're going to read. We open the floor and everyone can put forward their book ideas and we have a vote. I think actually in the last meeting I did say, does anybody have any ideas? And everybody was kind of like, what are you talking about?
No one can ever think of books when they're put on the spot.
No one had ideas on the spot.
My books are exactly the same.
So I was like, okay, all right, when we're online and we're not looking at each other, you can put your ideas in. So we put our ideas in and then we see which is the most popular. Hopefully people have read in advance. I'm the worst person for that, struggling to finish my book on time before the meeting. But anyway.
Well, it says a lot about the book. I always think if you struggle to finish it, maybe that's the first thing you say.
So usually the person who put forward the idea leads the session. And basically it means having some ideas of what to discuss, key themes, key moments in the book, characters. Yeah, just having questions ready in advance. Then sharing out those questions and just letting the discussion naturally evolve.
Oh, that's interesting. So you pre-prepare questions?
It depends on the person. That's what I recommend.
Yeah, it really depends. I'm slightly rigid, and so I like to over-prepare. The first meetup, I literally just arrived with paper and pen and theme, and there was two different approach. Either you can go chronologically through the book, or you can go through theme and do an analysis of the book. Being French, having major in literature, I was literally like, this is amazing. I'm 16 again, and I can actually analyze text. I love it. So that's my personal approach, but Carina has more of a linear approach to the book and to the chronology, and then we just explore more the characters. It's all about making sure that the conversation keeps going, so we won't follow step by step the flow of questions, but it's much more if there's a bit of a
you have them there to fall back on, because I imagine it is different when you've got a book club of people that don't necessarily know each other that well, and you've got people who are maybe coming for the first time. And have there been any books, Caroline, that have stuck out in your memory as being particularly good discussion books?
The Passion of Eve.
Passion of New Eve.
The Passion of New Eve.
What was that one? I've never heard of it. What was it? So who's the author? Can you remember?
Go for it. The author is Angela Carter.
Ah, right, okay.
Lots and lots, like people hated it or loved it, and
yes,
it was brilliant.
There was just a real diversity of opinion on it. So I think there were a lot of books where a lot of people felt differently about the characters, but the same about the book. Whereas this one, we had very dramatic differences between how people felt. It was a funny one for me because I went into book club thinking, I've got nothing to say about this book. I really didn't like it. I thought it was awful. And then by the time I came away from it, I obviously had so many passionate discussions with people about what different things meant that I was like, actually, that was a pretty good book, I have to say. It really explored things in a way that I didn't really acknowledge while I was reading it.
Absolutely. And that's sort of everything that's brilliant about book clubs, isn't it?
Yeah, and to put a bit more into perspective, The Passion of New Eve, Angela Carter wrote that in the early 70s. So there's radical feminism through and through. She does a massive critique of her own feminism at the time, and it's the story of a guy who gets abducted by a team of Amazon in the desert and turned into a woman.
Okay.
And forced to become a woman physically, but also emotionally, and having all the references by being forced to watch 24/7 romantic Hollywood movies. It's just so rich. I can't summarize it, but it's magical realism. It's completely crazy and mad. There's rape triggers every other page, which we did not know at the time when we put it through to be read. So
what is a rape trigger?
There's a lot of rape happening throughout the book.
On the page?
Yeah, which was not something that we knew about. And a couple of people in the book club highlighted that, being like, this is not okay. You guys need to put a trigger, which is something that we've done.
To warn people.
Then. Yeah, to warn them.
Carina, any particular standouts for you?
One surprising book, Herland by Charlotte Gilmore Perkins, an American feminist, and it's a utopian novel, this ideal state of women only, they rule. It's really interesting. A group of guys go to this wonderful place, which they don't really believe exists. And they kind of like try to find out if it exists, and they just try to find out all about it, how these women live, survive, reproduce, which they are able to do. I thought it was kind of cool and amazing. There's kind of like no conflict, no war. But then some people pointed out, isn't that really boring? But apart from this kind of perfect female state, I think what was surprising or shocking for me was that even though she was a staunch feminist, she was also a bit of a racist on the side. That kind of came up in the writing. They were anti-abortion as well. Yeah, so kind of surprising things came up in this.
When was it written? Is it sort of its time?
Yes, yeah. 1915 or something like that. Yeah, there's some really good parts to it, and then some not so good bits.
We also read more recent books, like Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Reni Eddo-Lodge.
Oh, I'm reading that right now.
Oh.
What do you think?
Well, I haven't finished it. I've only read 2 or 3 chapters, but I love the way she writes. I feel like she's sitting next to me, talking to me, and I love that. It's so immediate. So yeah, so far for me, I'm really intrigued and absolutely engaged. I really want to hear what she's got to say.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing. We've also read Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, which is one of my absolute favourites.
He's a talk show host in
the
US, isn't he?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And Born a Crime is literally about his childhood, being born in South Africa, apartheid, from black mother and a white Swiss father, and having to live hidden. And his entire story is absolutely incredible. Knowing where he is now, how smart he is, it was quite a...
Good book club book.
It was a good book club.
Yeah, good discussion book.
It was a good book club book.
And what are you reading next? What have you got coming up?
The next book that we're going to read is a collection of short stories. Helen Oyeyemi. What is yours is not yours. Because we tried to mix up the type of books, obviously we've read novels, novellas, and yeah, I thought it would be quite good to read some short stories. People are always pressed for time and they don't always get to finish off a book. So at least with this one, you can dip in and read some of those stories and still be able to participate in the discussion later. And from what I've read about this book, I think some people are like divided on her style, which is fantastical. So I'm quite excited about reading this collection because I think it will be great for discussion.
And when you're thinking ahead and thinking about books to suggest to the group, what are you looking for? What would make a book pop up on your radar?
I don't know. I guess what's popular at the time. You know, we're going through this kind of Brexit thing. So immigration, race and identity seem to be very popular right now. I think that's influenced what we've been reading recently. Born a Crime, you know, Trevor Noah. Americana, we also read. I guess these are kind of like hot topics of the moment.
Caroline?
I'm always trying to push the gay agenda. So for me, I'm always recommending the top lesbian novels read on Goodreads. That's my default list I go to when I've got recommendations to make.
Thank you so much for telling me about your book club. It's been so interesting. And I hesitate to actively recruit you more members if you're already overloaded. But if people are interested, they can find you online.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. They can definitely find us online.
And it sounds like you'll be, hopefully, if your idea of having little chapters across London works out, then it sounds like there might be a lesbian book club coming to you soon.
Yeah, exactly. And we are currently working on the website. So the new website will be launched in January, and we have lots of new meetups, panel talks, book reviews that will be revealed from next year onwards.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And so, if you think you might want to run a chapter of the Lesbian Book Club, they would love to hear from you. They're on Facebook under Lesbian Book Club East London, and you can find them under the same name on meetup.com. Eléonore is also on Twitter at @Pratoussy, that's Pratoussy, and they will be launching their own website soon. On our next book club show, we'll be discussing The Unfinished Palazzo by Judith Mackerel. It's a page-turning biography of 3 extraordinary women, but did it make for a good book club discussion? Listen in to find out.
If you'd like to see what we're up to between episodes, follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Book Club Review Podcast, on Twitter at Book Club River Pod, that's Book Club RVW Pod, or you can always email us at thebookclubreview@gmail.com. And if you're not already, why not subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts?
But for now, thanks for listening and happy reading.